You are now listening to the Too Short for the League podcast, hosted by Caleb Kingston.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you all for tuning in. Like, follow, subscribe, do what you need to do. Thank you, our sponsors, for sponsoring this episode and bringing this show to you. Today we have a great guest, 3-time championship coach, 2-time coach of the year, never ever missed the playoffs. Matt Parsons, welcome to the show.
Caleb, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
That's a good wrap-up.
Yeah, that's why I got you to tell me all your accomplishments.
That's it.
And so, what have you been up to recently?
Mate, retired.
Retired.
Well,
what is retirement like?
Semi-retirement. Yeah, good. I'm really enjoying it. It has been a long time. Yeah, 10 years now where I haven't had an off-season.
Yeah.
The family are pretty happy with it. But look, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be time for a nice break. 10 years is a long time to be coaching.
Yeah. The
league has changed so much. Like, it's now this professional world. Before, I mean, it wasn't, not that it wasn't before.
Yeah.
But now the commercial side of it just adds another element. I think it's a really wearing and tearing type of
job.
Yeah, job. And I think you just need a break every now and then.
Especially at this level, because you have to do 5 jobs.
Mate, the demographic of players that you've got in your group, I mean, you've got your professional athletes to your uni students to your aspiring athletes. They all need something different. And
then you got to do recruiting as well. Then sometimes you have to do money talks with them as well.
Mate, this is the worst time of the year. the end of the season where you're trying to retain players and you're having to tell them the story. And, I mean, obviously, the back end of every season during the review period is difficult anyway, Caleb, to be honest with you. But it's a lot harder when, I guess, you're trying to be honest and you're trying to really gauge where an athlete needs to go, what direction they need to go in. It's difficult, and you've got to have those difficult conversations. And not only that, it's also a dog-eat-dog world, and clubs want to recruit. And, you know, at the back end of every year, you've got 13 other clubs targeting your players. So it's a really tricky thing, and you've got to be super honest and try and put the kid on their best path possible. And outside of that, you've got to look at a million highlight tapes of players, and you've got imports coming through, emails and all sorts of social media forums.
How many agents were hitting you up every season? Mate,
you get them every week.
Yeah.
Like, it's someone different from somewhere else in the world every single week. I mean, I don't know how many agents I've told that I'm not coaching this year, and they still hit me up with good players, and it's like...
When an agent does that, do you still look at the player, or you're like, well, this player profile just doesn't fit my needs at all?
Look, I think the better part of me will probably still look. But at the moment, just because I'm a bit worn out, I've probably just parked it a little bit and haven't really gone into that big rabbit hole, because it's a really tricky one. I mean, you can watch thousands and thousands of highlight tapes. I mean, that's like, anyone can make a highlight tape, right? Yeah. So it's the best of everybody, and they all look pretty good. But to finally get in and really deep dive and start getting some character checks and watch full game tapes and check out body language and all those things that you need to have a look at, it's a full-time job.
Have you watched any basketball games since you retired?
Not one. In its entirety?
Yeah.
I watched 3 minutes of the Wildcats last week.
Do you find, as a coach, when you watch a game, you can't enjoy it because you're nitpicking at everything?
Yeah, pretty much. That was a big journey of mine for a long time, where I was coaching every minute. And then there was a switch that clicked, and I was kind of like, I can enjoy this again.
Yeah.
And then...
Because it's like film students, when they're watching a movie, they critique everything, or
they would.
Cinematography and whatnot. I coached an under-20s WABL team, and I find any time I'd watched the basketball during that period, I was just critiquing everything, even like trying to study as well, which is a good thing.
Yep.
But I just couldn't just sit and enjoy the game. And it wasn't until I stopped coaching and stopped caring about that sort of thing where I was like, okay, I can just watch a game.
And you can be in awe of what they do, right?
Yeah.
But even then you can kind of get lost in, the defense coverage didn't happen the way I would have done it. And I think it's a really great way to be inquisitive and trying to explore, what you can do on the floor, or what you could influence on the game if you're a coach sitting at home. But look, I think at the end of the day, it's hard to sit down and watch a game at the moment, but it will come.
Yeah. Well, we'll reflect back on your time as a coach. Yep. What sort of got you into coaching?
Mate, it was a bit of it's a good question. Stumped me a bit, but no, look, I played.
Yep.
I was a bench player. I wasn't anything special. I had a couple of games early in my career where I was probably a bit more prominent than I was at the back end of my career.
At SPL level?
At SPL level, yeah. And
for what club?
So at that stage, I was with East Perth. So I'd gone to East Perth under the tutelage of Adam Capehorn, who's now obviously doing some pretty good things in the NBA circles. And also a Boomer's assistant at the moment. He was just coming out of his Wildcats career and his NBL career, and he had bought this opportunity to come back to Perth, and I think he might have even been part of the Wildcats program still then as a player, but wanted to start his journey. And I mean, his journey's gone through the roof. He's obviously coached at St Mary's as an assistant. He was at the Centre of Excellence for 10 years. He's now then went to Brooklyn and coached their G League team, and now moved into their NBA program. So his journey's huge. I was right at the very beginning of it, and it was a bit of fun, but injuries got the best of me, and a couple of hamstrings and a couple of bad backs. And before you know it, we had a pre-season trip down south, down to Margaret River, which was a thing we did every year, and I retired on the way down. That's how much I wasn't looking forward to doing any of the activities I had planned. So, I quickly became an assistant in that 3-hour trip, and, haven't looked back since.
So you've always had high basketball IQ?
Depends who you ask. I was probably the worst player to coach.
Right.
Because I always had an opinion.
Yeah,
Didn't need to be right or wrong. It was just my opinion.
Yeah.
Which has probably held me in good stead now as a coach, because you got to kind of back your own. You got to be confident in your own abilities as a coach. And certainly, if you're going to say something, you got to sell it for what it is.
Yeah.
But
some head coaches look for that in an assistant as well.
You do, and as you get older, you get a little bit more comfortable in your own skin. So like initially, you're like, this is my system, and I need to know what's going on. Defense, offense. I want to be in charge of the substitutions. I want every training thing. You micromanage everything, and as you get more comfortable, and you think, oh, well, what am I going to learn? You can start opening your eyes to people, and then people come in and add genuine belief and genuine, just good people. And they just bring good vibes around the place, and they've got so much experience. There's so many talented coaches in WA, and we've had a few at Prairie Lakes in my time, and Coburn previously, and you tap into them, and you can learn some great lessons.
So did your wife or coaching, did you know straight away as soon as you were a coach, like, I love this, or was it more to stick around the group?
Probably more social than anything.
That's why I was doing it. So.
Yeah, mate, it is, and it's a funny story, because we had a guy called Damien Chalk, and I'm not sure, you probably wouldn't remember him. He's a yesteryear player. He was like a little point guard he was the starting point guard for that very successful Bunbury Slammers team they had like back in the 90s.
Yep.
And he, awesome bloke, and I've had a great relationship with him for a long time, but he was the head coach. I was his assistant, so he inherited the team from Adam Capehorn, and we were short players one game. And Chalky, being this pretty aggro, fast, competitive guy, still is in his 50s, he suited up. And, funny story is that he suited up, the crowd got a bit chanty. This was back in his birth. There used to be some crazy guys that sit down on the baseline, and they were like, Chalky. So he gets on the floor, 13 seconds in, does his Achilles.
Oh, no.
13 seconds in. He blames me for it still to this day. I'm not the one chanting, but from that moment, he couldn't coach anymore, and I kind of inherited the team, and it's been a journey since.
Did he get in trouble for that?
Did he get in trouble for that?
Yeah.
Probably from his wife more than anything, but no, probably.
How old was he when he did his ACL?
He would have been probably early 40s.
Okay.
He shouldn't have suited up.
Yeah.
He blames me for calling the sub, but I had no responsibilities.
I'll actually tell you a funny coach's story. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this story, but CJ Jackson.
I know CJ.
Yeah.
Well,
so when he was a player at the Redbacks, his coach sat him down for one game because something had happened at training. So he rocked up to the game with KFC.
Did he?
And was at the end of the bench eating his KFC. His team's now getting pummeled by like 50 points. Probably not that high. It's probably like 30. It's probably over-exaggerated through the many stories.
Yep.
And eventually the coach just looks at him and goes, all right, fine, get on. CJ gets on, and then they end up winning the game.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. You reckon they were sponsored by KFC?
Yeah, that
would have been perfect product placement.
Yeah. But every time I see CJ now, I just picture him eating KFC at the bottom of a bench. Just no respect for that coach at the time. I'm that good, I can just hop on.
He was pretty good though.
Yeah, I've heard Magic Johnson of the SBL.
Yeah, but he says that.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, and he's a absolute staple of West Australian basketball community, but he has got a few stories that have been exaggerated over time.
Yeah.
There might have only been one bit of chicken, not even a whole bucket.
Yeah, true. Who are your sort of coaching mentors?
Yeah, probably Damien Chalk was big early. He had this huge world outside of basketball in which he was leading and going through the construction industry as a really prominent figure within the HR department and that sort of stuff. So he had this great impersonation he was able to really represent with people.
Yep.
I kind of followed that journey with him a little bit into that same industry and kind of worked with him as well. So inside and outside of basketball, and he's probably been the greatest influence. I think the rest is just people that you meet along the way. I think once you open your heart a little bit to the playing group and to the coaches you got around you, I think that's the inspiration to continue going, because it's relationship.
Yeah.
The whole thing about world's about relationship, right?
Yeah. So it's like the social aspect, your favourite part of
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
It's also the hardest part too.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean you can't be in a place for a long time without upsetting people along the way.
Yeah.
There's some really good people that you probably would like to see in and around, and when you're trying to coach a team and win, you've got to balance winning versus doing it with people that you really want to do it with, and ensuring that social circle and network that you've got within your group is really strong. And sometimes it just the two don't line up. And I think the most disappointing part is that you do fall away from people that you've got great respect for, but you just wish you could have given them more time.
So you said you're retired, but retired from coaching, you're still working outside?
Still working outside, obviously that's not going to stop for a long time. But in terms of basketball, I've probably retired from being paid to coach, but I'm still coaching WABL under 13s. How's this? So Perry Lakes WABL under 13 Division 3 team is co-coached by myself and a gentleman, I don't know if you know this, it's a throwback name, Tony Ronaldson.
No.
So Tony Ronaldson, nicknamed the Bear, he's an Australian boomer, a former Perth Wildcats captain.
Yeah.
Has done a lot in his basketball career, and the two of us just trot around as this little co-coaching combo.
You have kids?
I do, 3 kids.
Playing?
Yeah, so I've got 2 playing WABL, one under 13s, one under 14s, and the other one under 12s.
So is one of them on the team that you're coaching?
Yeah, he is.
So that's why you're...
Yeah. So
does he like that you're coaching?
Well, yes and no. I think no if I drag him or get into him, but I try and leverage off Tony a little bit to say all the bad things, and I'll just pump up his tyres, and his kids on the team as well, so we kind of reverse those roles.
What do you think of WABL having so many divisions in each age group? Because we just had Giannis, that episode will be out after this one, but he sort of said in Europe it's just one team. If you're not good enough, you're not good enough.
Not good enough. Look, I kind of like it. I think it's about development and pathway, so kids just need an opportunity to play. I think the first 4 teams is fine. I think if you start getting into a 5th and a 6th team, you're probably stretching it a little bit. The talent probably wears thin. But I mean, if you go into a domestic competition, there's generally only 2 or 3 good kids, and it falls away very, very quickly. So the more you can bring those kids into one circle and let them play, and you practice their meaningful learnings, which is what they get at training, and then put them into games, I think it's a good opportunity. So 4 is probably enough for me, and after that, I think you got to probably stop.
Well, the thing I have trouble with it is, I mean, you come from Hawks, which is a fantastic club and how they run things, but other WABL clubs, they'll have 4 teams. And you got to find, and for development, then you don't have the coaches to develop them at that age group. Sometimes you have to get a parent to volunteer to do that. And then that's where I have the problem with it, is that you got so many teams, and you just have average coaches or that aren't developing them up. So then they get to under 18s, they don't know how to cut, they don't know UCA cut, they don't know how to set a screen, they don't know how to set up for a screen, they don't know any of that sort of thing, and it's a bit too late.
It's pretty common though.
Yeah,
it happens a lot, and I guess that's the hardest part. I think if the old saying is if you have a bad coach, it can ruin your whole basketball experience. And I think sometimes a lot goes to be said, because it's difficult to volunteer and to give up time with family and that to go and coach. So you got kudos to those people brave enough to do it. And then I think the club's responsible for giving them a little bit more support and time. And I haven't yet seen the perfect model. And again, I'm newly exposed to WABL. All my basketball coaching is done at NBL level, NBL 1 level, which has been pretty straightforward. Everything's kind of handed to you. But certainly down there's a lot of great people who want to do well, but just don't have the tools or the resources. It's about the clubs trying to find a little bit more support in those spaces. Yeah.
So I've known, that's what Redbacks have been trying to do, is development pathways for even the coaches as well, just so those younger people can get the proper development that they need, so when they get to under 18s, under 20s, they know what's going on. And
that's the beautiful thing about these clubs becoming more commercial. They can now afford to actually pay someone to do that role, because you can't volunteer that role. That's there's a lot of WABL clubs. I mean, there's 54 teams or something in these bigger clubs. So the reality is you can't get around to 54 people in your own volunteer time. It just doesn't happen. So that means someone's going to fall away, and generally it's going to be your 3s and 4s teams. So I think once the clubs are understanding, okay, we need to pay to get these guys into, a coaching development officer into this, and actually spending time with these guys, we'll see the benefits. And I think clubs are now starting to get that commercial background and that foundation now financially to actually support some of those roles, which will only see, the competition get better.
Would you coach coaches?
Yeah, I have spent a bit of time doing that, particularly around the domestic competition and teams in Perry Lakes. But look, maybe in the future anything, but I would love to give back to the game a little bit. It's been pretty rewarding for me. So,
well, when I was coaching, I had Nick Lakovic be my mentor, and his main thing was just have non-negotiables.
100%.
Is that your main philosophy as well?
Big time. Yeah, you walk in there and you set the standard. I think whether that's a training philosophy, whether that's the passion that they bring in, whether it's respect that the parents have for the program and the players have in terms of they communicate to each other, but most importantly, up the chain a little bit. All those things are hugely important. Non-negotiables, I think, is life, right? You've got to create boundaries for yourself, and you're going to come across a lot of different types of people who are going to want different things. Everyone's got a different agenda, whether it's basketball related, non-basketball related. You just set your boundary, and then
it's not only for basketball as well. Like, I played 1 year at WABL. Yep. My coach was Simo, same age as me.
Yep.
And then I coached.
That's tough.
I coached an under-20s team at 21, so I'm pretty much the same age as those players.
Yep.
So I went out and sought out Nick Lakovic for advice. But non-negotiables, habits as well, building habits throughout your life as well.
Big time.
It just doesn't apply for basketball. I've applied it to everything.
Mate, it is, yeah.
So going out finding like someone that knows more than you and that's more experienced than you in whatever you're trying to do, and you can just apply it to other things as well.
Sport gives you a great boundary for all of that, because I mean you learn hierarchy and leadership, and you can learn how to take and give instructions, and I think you can adapt that to everything in life. So whether it's corporately or whether it's in school or whether it's in sport, it's such a unique skill to have. And for mine, I'd like to see more and more kids play sport purely just for that reason. Like not to be professional, but just to learn those basic values. And I think as an individual, if you set your values and you go, okay, well this is me, and this is what makes up who is Matt Parsons and who is Caleb, and if people cross that boundary or knock down that bridge or whatever it is that you're trying to protect, then that's your opportunity to say, look, I'm not happy with this, and you move on, and you can kind of say, look, mate, you're not ticking the same values as me. And basketball's the same. If you get players who are disgruntled because they're not getting minutes and they're out on social media voicing their frustrations or in their friendship circle, and it comes back to you and it's like, mate, this doesn't fit my values. Like, if you've got a problem, come and speak to me. We can talk about it. We'll be honest, and I'll be as genuine as I possibly can, because number one rule as a coach is never make a promise you can't keep. Right. So I'm going to tell you exactly how it is, but
Nixie said under promise, over deliver.
Every time.
The
minute you make a promise and you can't deliver, you lose
your word.
Respect. And it's sometimes you'll get respect purely because you've got the position, and the position might be like, I'm the head coach. But if you promise and can't deliver, you can't come back from that.
Are you sort of open to people just coming up to you and asking how to be a coach, or are you sort of more like, oh, let's actually book a time to?
Look, I prefer to book a time because generally I'm going to be in and around with my family, so I'm probably already having quality time, something that I haven't been able to have that much as a coach. But certainly, if people wanted to reach out, I've got no issues giving something back and giving some time. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can only ask a question, and I'm going to be honest in my assessment and my answer. So that's pretty much how it's going to go.
Or as a coach, did you have like a routine that you would do? So you sort of wake up, plan for your training session.
Left shoe on first. Look, I'm a creature of habit, as most people are. So for mine, it was trainings had to be at the same time, games had to be at the same time, had to be there at the same time, had to drink the same thing, had to have a coffee pre-game. All these superstitions that I think it just helps you probably just manage your emotions a little bit. I think routine in that situation allows you to go, okay, I'm allowed to feel like this in this moment, and I'm allowed to feel like this in this moment. And then once the coffee's had, you can start thinking about other people and how this is going to implement. And I think everyone's got a little bit of selfishness in what their approach is, but I think knowing when to stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about what's best for the group is a wonderful trait to have. So you've got to kind of train yourself. So you establish habits. You talked about that before. It's just a really good way of doing that.
So how's it been now that you're not having to do any of that? Is it hard?
Mate, I don't know. I haven't experienced. I'm loving we talked about it before. I'm loving the off season and not having to recruit.
How long has it been?
Only end of this season.
Okay.
So when the Redbacks knocked us out of the playoffs, it was it was pretty quickly known that I was done, and the family found out as soon as I walked up into the stands. But I think for mine, I'm just trying to give myself a little bit of distance from basketball. I still love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it, and I still speak to a lot of coaches and stuff around the league. But I'm really enjoying the time.
So obviously, if you decided as soon as you lost, you probably knew earlier on. When was it that you decided?
Straight after the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just like that?
Yeah, look, I probably subconsciously knew going into it, but as soon as we got beaten, and I kind of probably lost that passion a little bit. Through the course of the season, you kind of get a feel for it, and I think hindsight would have been, look, the best time to go would have been the year before. Maybe it went 12 months too long, but that's hindsight. And at the end of the day, if you love something long enough, you want to fight for it. But maybe 12 months, and And I could have done it and been a bit more happier with the decision, but I'm pretty happy and comfortable where it is now.
So what you're saying is Nixie beat you so bad that he put you into retirement. I'm just
Mate,
kidding.
well, he did beat us bad. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't the best outcome, but yeah, we had a terrible finish to the year. We had a really strong run home. I think we finished our last 5 games, which we actually lost as the longest losing streak I've had as a coach. Was like we've had Joondalup twice. I think we had Rockingham, Geraldton, and then the Redbacks, and that's all top 4 teams really. I know Redbacks finished 5th, but ended up being in that top 4 after beating us.
We would have been up there if we didn't have our injuries at the start of the season and whatnot. But to be fair to you, Nixie, I had worked with Nixie throughout that year, and he'd always talk about the Hawks like that was the only team. Well, not the
that he wanted to beat.
The one team he loved being Perry Lakes.
To have good relationships, but like I genuinely like beating Perry Lakes. Like that's an important game to me because that's where I started,
especially at Bendat.
Yeah, that's a big game for me. And Bendat's where grand finals are played, so we need to be good there. So I do circle that every year, and I think. And it's not, and I said this the other day to our CEO, I said, I don't hate Perry Lakes at all. I actually genuinely love Perry Lakes. I think they're a great club. I think they run things the right way, but I love beating them.
Yep, he loves beating Perry Lakes.
Oh, and you love going back to the clubs that you've had relationships with. You got people there who kind of give you that little bit of motivation. As coaches, you got to find it somewhere, and you go back to former clubs. Like, I've got it with Coburn and even East Perth back in the days. I love going back to those places and winning. Like it is. That little internal happiness, tick that box and move on and allow yourself to really enjoy those ones a little bit more. And then you've got your other ones like who doesn't love going up to Joondalup and winning, or up to Geraldton, big crowds, or Kalgoorlie. It's just you find those little things and they kind of drive you.
You've won 3 championships, and we'll get a bit into that later on. But since you're such a successful coach, were the offers coming from higher leagues or colleges or?
No, probably not to the extent that you would hope or to think. It's a little bit tricky because I think to make it to a professional level, there's got to be a level of sacrifice. And if you look at the guys that are in it now, like kudos to them. They haven't been able to advance their career outside of basketball. They probably don't have young families in that sense. So for mine, those things are way more important than basketball, and certainly basketball career in terms of going to the next level. If there was a role where you could work 40 hours a week, spend time with your family. Don't have to watch, film all the time. Yeah, then I'm down for it. But in terms of sacrificing, finances for starters, because obviously you're not going to get paid that much as an assistant in the NBL, and the head coach jobs all go to Americans these days, or really high profile Australians, and there just aren't enough of them. So the reality is, it's probably an assistant role, and you're doing 80 hours a week for $60,000 a year. Like you do the sums, it probably doesn't work out.
Yeah. This might offend you a little bit. Do you think some people take credit away from your 3 championships because it was Hawks, and Hawks are such a well-run club, and they're successful. They were successful before you got there. Yep. Do you think a little bit?
Look, I think at the end of the day, Hawks has that perception of being successful because they have been. Yeah, and that's outside looking in, that's a fair, reasonable thought. But when you're in there and the expectation to win, when John Gardner, who is the greatest coach in West Australian history, is the only coach who's ever won there, and you walk in there, you feel the expectation. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done something to a point where everyone believes that you have to win. Yep. So you walk in there, holy moly, like, am I prepared for the pressure that comes with having to win every single game? Yep. So that in itself is a pretty remarkable skill to learn how to. You got to learn how to lose, but you've also got to learn to win under the pressure that everyone has. And when you're expected to win, it's tough. It's like, when was the last time you saw a team go back-to-back in the NBL 1? It doesn't happen, right? The expectation levels doesn't make the same talent. You could work the same team. It could be the exact same league, but just that pressure to front up each week and know that, okay, well, our best is good enough. We should win this championship. Yeah. And it never works out.
Yeah. Well, Hawks are also really good in the sense that they bringing up their juniors is really well. I don't know particularly what they do different to other clubs. Yep. You got how many players last season did you have that had come up from? I know AJ was there.
Yeah, AJ.
Harry Emerson was there.
Yeah, Emerson, Nick Floyd.
Yeah.
Yep, Mitch Clark.
Yeah.
And there's probably Ben Purser, obviously.
And that's already, the amount you just said is way more than what other clubs usually produce. Yep. And how many imports did you have?
We just had the one last year.
Yeah, and that's unheard of these days as well. Yep. And
Yeah, and I think the other thing the Hawks do really well is they kind of align, a really good model with leadership.
Yep.
So they're trying to find people to set the standard. And when you bring these young kids through, they kind of know where they stand. I think when you've got a player like Ben Purser and Robbie Kassir, who, both retired this year, which after 2 remarkable careers, but they walk in and you've got to take minutes off them.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden nothing's given to you. I think that's sometimes a bit of a tricky thing in this league because you talk about expectation, right? You could play for a team that is in 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th position and be playing minutes. And then there's an expectation, I could go anywhere and play minutes. And then they don't, and all of a sudden there's a problem. But when you walk into a club like Hawks and you've got to take minutes off of Ben Purser, and he's not giving them up, and Rob Kassir's not giving up any minutes, so you've got to earn them. I mean, that's a level of expectation. That's why you have success, because these guys are driving those standards.
And it sort of makes your job easier when it comes to this off-season time, because you already know you have this core group that you can rely on. You don't have to go out and recruit the best import like some of these other teams have to do.
Yeah, I think, and you can kind of add value pieces then. You kind of look for something different, like
specific as well.
Yeah, do I need an import that just changes the atmosphere in the change room? As a sense, maybe we don't have it. Maybe we're quiet. We need a really loud import who's jovial and who can joke around, but can also be serious at the same time. And you just got to find that balance for the personalities in the group as well.
And I'm not talking about people, but is Hawks the best ran club that you've been part of? Yeah, without a doubt.
I think at the time, the 2 other clubs were very still learning where they stood. I think Coburn had come off some success and we're at a point where they had a bit of a change in the background in terms of who was their president and the people who were doing the work. And CJ had been there for a long time before I'd gotten there as well as the operations director. And that there was a whole lot of change. I think when I went to Prairie Lakes, the beautiful thing about it was a very stable club and it had people in positions and been there for 10 years, and you knew exactly what was going to happen, and they got it down to a fine art. So the basketball thing was you just turn up and coach. I think at the other clubs you're recruiting, you're organising the contracts, you're organising cars, you're organising visas, you're doing all these things off the floor. But the support goes a long way, and Hawks had established themselves to be there and have done that. So they kind of took.
So if you were to go back into coaching again and Hawks wasn't available, it would be more stability that you're looking for in the club.
Yeah, I think so. Stability is a big thing. I think you want advancement. You want a club who kind of sees the same things and the same values as you do, and how you find that and what you're looking for to get that are 2 different things, right? So you need to try and go, okay, well, this club might not have the financing support, but do they hit the junior development, values that you have to try and get better with? So I don't know what the process is going to be like at that decision-making time. But look, the reality is I probably will come back at some stage, or I'd like to. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, someone's got to offer
what
me
sort
a
of
job.
capacity?
I'd come back as an NBL1 coach if I could NBL1 head coach.
Yeah. And you don't care? Are you saying right now someone can come contact you and you listen to them?
No, I'd talk to anyone. If someone wanted to have an honest conversation, just see where I was at, I'd hear them out. And look, at the end of the day, I think it's like anything. If you go into something and take one thing away from it, successful, you've made the most out of that situation. I think if I went in there and set my standards and said, look, this is what I expect, and the club's like, oh, we can't really match that, they go away and go, okay, well, next year the next person we need to present a better offer, and then they become a better club. So the reality is, I know what I want, and I'm comfortable in my skin, and if it means in my coaching skin, and if it means that there's no club that aligns with what I need at the time or what I'm looking to do at the time, then there isn't. We just move on. But at the end of the day, I'll speak to anyone, and hopefully we can both just have a great conversation. Whether that leads to anything or not, who knows?
Yeah. What year did you get to Hawks?
2017. So I won a championship 16 at Coburn.
Okay.
And then left in that off season.
Sorry, your 3 championships were Coburn, Hawks, and Hawks?
Yep.
Okay. So when were you? So Hawks, you were 2016. So I was only 15. I wasn't even sort of playing basketball.
Yep.
What was the club like before you got there? Were they already successful, or did you have to build them up?
You're talking about with Hawks?
Yeah.
So so when I won the championship at Coburn in 16, we played the Hawks in the semi-finals to win that championship, or maybe the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
No, it was the semis. They were really good. I mean, they had Brighton Hobbs, who's an extremely talented player. That was his first stint out here in Perth. And they had some, Ben Pursers and your Ryan Smiths, who's an underrated player, and your Robbie Kassirs. They were pretty stacked. Josh Garlett was running around. And
was he a player?
He was a pretty good player. His brother was really good.
Oh wow!
But Josh was a high impact guy that could come in and do lots in a really short space of time, and awesome career outside of Basel too, by the way. How good's his social media presence at the moment? But look, they were pretty good. So, it was a bit of a, move sideways into a club that I thought could probably transition and carry me further as a coach. And obviously, history suggests that was the correct decision.
And then your Coburn one, again, I wasn't watching basketball this time. Were they poor before you got there?
Yeah, so I think the year I got there, they used to have this little thing, like every year they'd have these rankings, and they would do it with like coaches around the competition or former coaches in the competition, and they'd predicted us to come dead last in my first year, which was 2015. So I think we finished 5th or 4th. So certainly over-exceeded or overachieved where we were supposed to finish. But, I mean, it's so tricky to make those predictions and use it as a little bit of fire, no doubt. There's a lot of motivation coming out of that sort of stuff.
So you've done both. You've built up a team, taken them to a championship, and then you've come into a semi-successful team and taken them to a championship.
Yep.
Do you prefer just building them straight up from the ground? And
mate, there's a lot to be taken for the build. I really like the build up, and I think at Hawks we probably had to do that as well a couple of times because, you've still got the stability of some of the older guys, but for any longevity, you can't just roll out the same stuff every week. So you can't just go, okay, well, we're going to run a pack line defense for 7 years because it's just boring.
Yeah,
like the players will master it in about 3 years, and then they'll just be like, well, I'm not being challenged anymore. So you've got to reinvent yourself and reinvent your systems and your structures and your philosophies. 3 times I had to do that in my 7 years of Hawks.
Yeah.
Just to try and get the best out of the group. So with that comes different recruiting techniques and different people coming in. You might have some people, but then you've got to try and change. Like a Ben Purser who's played 370,000 games in this competition, and I think he just missed 400 by not many games, which is so many. He would have seen different iterations of teams, and every time he does that, he's got to learn a new habit. And the older you get, the more games you play, the harder it is to establish a habit during what you're doing. So you've got to sell the change, and then certainly motivate them to continue to get the best out of themselves.
So your championships are quite funny because your first one, obviously, you've taken a bad team, you've won. Then your second one with Hawks, it would have been you've just beaten them, taken them, they win.
Yep.
And then your last one was the first one after COVID, if we're not counting West Coast Classic. Mm-hmm. Do any of them stand up more than the other, or they're all sort of same level to you?
Look, the first one was probably unexpected.
Yep.
And certainly that was in the middle of the peak Joondalup days. Like, they went 4 grand finals and they lost 4 grand finals in a row. Maybe
back
even
when
5.
they were in that 10.
Yeah, up there. It was a crazy shed, that one. But, they had the expectation. All the pressure was on them every year to win. And so we kind of came through in the second year and got the win when no one was expecting it. And we probably didn't expect it either. So you certainly enjoy and revel in the success. But that first Hawks one for mine was probably good because no one else had won there. So they had
2003.
Yeah, so post that championship, I think it's 2003, 2004. Yeah, one of those days. Like post that, no coach had any success going in there. They had obviously gone to playoffs and they'd done, but no one had been able to get them over that line. So that was the one for mine to get my name up on lights in terms of that club as being only the second coach to win the championship. That was a tough one. And then to go back and win the second one probably just added a little bit more because, when you win, you start getting a taste for it.
Yep.
And if you don't, anything that's not a championship is a pretty sour taste. So to get a second one in that club was really important too.
Sweet. I do have a question. I asked this to Nixie as well. There was an NFL player that won the Super Bowl, had his trophy, then was just in the hotel room and was like, now what? Did you have the same thing?
Yeah, I think, I wouldn't say to that level. I think when you win, you pretty quickly look at how do you win back-to-back, and that's an art. Like we started talking about it a little bit before. Like no one does it. It takes a completely different mentality. And you just don't know what that is. Yeah. Until you're in that position, you don't get that many opportunities to practice for it. So, I've managed to do it 3 times and not had success in the backup year. So it's tricky to say, okay, this is the recipe for success to back, but it's hard. No one knows how to do it. So yeah, I'd love to know how, but yeah, certainly not sitting there going, what's next? But I certainly understand that, especially when you give your whole life to a sport, and you're like, right, what's tomorrow bring?
Yeah, I think he was sort of like, is this it? Like, I've worked my entire life to get this. I've got it. I've celebrated a little bit, and now I'm just sort of like...
And now what?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to find... And that's we talk about reinventing yourself. Like, you've got to find different ways to inspire yourself and to try and change your philosophies and mentalities and the way you do things. It's just purely just to keep yourself interested sometimes.
Yeah. Coahces is a proud sponsor of the Too Short for the League podcast. Go 1% and conquer with GOAC. Strive for getting 1% better every single day. GOAC isn't just a sports brand, it's a movement. The movement aims to build a rich basketball culture throughout Australia, and their practical gear and clothing lines are specifically designed for hoopers of all ages and skill groups. The adaptability of GOAC's gear allows you to play indoors, outdoors, anywhere, anytime. Go 1% and conquer with GOAC.
Face Your Fears is a proud sponsor of the Too Short for the League podcast. Face Your Fears was established by former MMA and heavyweight champion Soa the Hulk after hanging up his gloves. Now an author, actor, coach, and public speaker, Soa is also a strong advocate for mental health. To learn more about Soa and Face Your Fears, visit faceyourfears.co.
It's now time for everyone's favourite segment, the draft. Today, we're doing a Coach by Parsons draft. Now, my knowledge doesn't extend this far, so I'm going to let you pretty much draft the entire team. Point guard to six man. You choose who you want. Your all-time has to be coached by you.
Deal. So, I thought about this. They're giving me a good segue. You've given me a great segue into this. Yeah. You let me think about it in advance. And I thought, do I go talent? Do I go success? Do I go... People. I kind of went with who's created probably the biggest impact on me as a coach and helped me develop my journey. So there's going to be some guys in here you'll know, and there'll be some guys in here you don't know. But if you ever get a chance,
research them.
Have a bit of a Google search. Yeah, they're pretty remarkable. So you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then six man.
Yep.
Okay, so and I'll throw some honourable mentions in there too because there's been some extremely talented kids throughout not only NBL 1 or SBL but also state teams and some touring teams that I've had. Go to Asia and a few things like that. So honourable mentions sitting in the one spot for point guards. So Mitch Clark would be in that list for honourable mentions. He a super talented kid, could achieve anything and still has a huge future ahead of him. I think he's playing for Bristol now in the BBL in England. He'll come back. I think he's going back over east this season. Definitely going to Bendigo.
Yeah.
And he's been there before, so he's obviously got that connection there. But fantastic human. I think he was just destined to be a really good sports person. He's got sport in his blood. His first cousin is a professional golfer, Curtis Luck, who's out there. His dad and mum just absolutely love it, and he was always going to get there. And then Wani Swakala-Bullock, another extremely talented guy who's doing some remarkable things in the NBL 1. He was for the WA state team.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. He was a huge talent, and got to know him a lot. Used to pick him up for training and take him to trainings, and we always we were unpack a bit about each other in there and get to know each other. So look, those two honourable mentions. But the guy who probably takes the point guards a general by the name of Dan Thomas.
Okay.
You wouldn't know Dan Thomas.
Idea.
So DT has. I've coached him at all three teams. So when I was in East Perth in the early days at Coburn, I recruited him and then I brought him to the Hawks. And he's won 2 championships with me. He is how do I say this nicely without him getting upset? He's about 5'6". He'll fight that he's taller than that, but he's got the biggest heart of anyone. He was always vertically challenged, but he was the most competitive person you'll ever meet, and he got the best out of himself. This guy was an all-star in our competition. He used to average 26 points, was part of some really successful teams, went up to Geraldton for a long time, was part of a lot of successful teams up there, came back to Coburn. He was a Coburn junior, and then brought him to Prairie Lakes. He's just an incredible human being, and he's turned his attention to golf. He I think last season he won like the World Amateur Golf Championship or something with a good mate of his, which is really remarkable. And anything he puts his mind to, he just gets the best out of himself. Won 2 championships in those 3 teams with him as our starting point guard. So I'm going to put him in my one spot.
So 5'6", but is he stocky?
Stocky,
yeah. Okay.
And he elevated at the tip of his elevations when he would release his jump shot. He learnt how to play the game. He was a nugget defender, underrated. He famous for going to America for 12 months, coming back with the strongest American accent that he still uses now. But awesome guy. Yeah, just a fantastic human being, competitive as anyone I've ever met.
When we had Carl on, our advice for younger players, like chances are they're not going to be 6'4", was just to get bulky just
to get strong.
And you look at anyone under 6'1" and beneath, they're just stocky, strong dudes like Joel Wagner and stuff like that.
Oh, you just can't push them off this. And they become men too, right? So they get this uber strength and they just know how to use it. And they know how to use it right to be that small and use it. But in a competition like we have with the 7-footers, you've got to just know how to use your weight. So puts them on and then good to go.
Who's your 2?
So my 2, again, I'm going sentimental on this one as well. I've had some pretty outstanding twos in my time. Alex Dukas is my honourable mention, who's at the University of St Mary's at the moment. Matt Adeponye is a guy I had at Prairie Lakes in 2017. Probably one of the most talented guys that I've ever coached. He went to an Asia tour that we ran after we won the championship at Coburn, called the Seri Mutiara Cup, which is like all these teams from Asia come and compete in Malaysia for this. We weren't getting paid anything, but they were all getting paid lots and lots of money. And he went there and just absolutely tore this thing up, and ended up being drafted into the NBA G League from this tournament.
Jeez.
Which is remarkable, right? Absolutely remarkable. And he now is the guy. Have you guys seen the Rose Gold doco?
No.
So there's this Rose Gold doco who is about the Boomers' journey into winning that Rose Gold.
Where's that on?
I think you can find it on ABC now.
Okay.
He's the director of that. He's now the Boomers' social media guy, and Paddy Mills is social media person. Like his career's just
is that with Dreads?
Yeah.
Yes, I know him. Yeah, I know him from that though.
From that, yeah. So he was one of the most talented guys that I've ever met. But the guy that for mine that ticked all the boxes was a gentleman by the name of Ryan Smith, who I had at Hawks. He 2 championships, career 48% 3-point shooter. I think both championships there was 2 critical moments. One was a loose ball that needed to be won in 2018 that Smith has jumped on the floor and just ripped it off and secured us a possession, which we all know, bus was a possession game, and it was just a really pivotal moment. And then in 2021, injuries kind of got the better of him, but comes out, scores the last 7 of our last 9 points in the grand final, and just cements another championship. So he certainly secures that second spot for me.
Nice. Now the 3.
The 3, there's lots of honourable mentions, I guess, for the 3. You could throw Luke Travers in that mix, another who was also in the state team. There's a number of guys, but Ben Purser for mine is the guy. He speaks for himself.
Yep, longevity too.
Mate, just everything. Like he is everything that club stands for, and all the success that they've had is because of guys like himself. And he has the ability to play up. He can play 5. He can play 1. He can do everything in between. He can defend all 5 positions. And
that also, again, because he's so strong.
And he's so strong, yeah. And he's he sacrificed a lot for basketball. From a payment. He could have gone anywhere and got paid a lot more money, but stayed at Hawks, and I'm glad to see success. So he, hands down went to 3 spot.
Now the 4.
So the 4, a couple of honourable mentions here. Kyle Bowen would be ticking that box.
Would you off state team?
For state team, I forgot to mention Dan Griddish. Probably could have been in that 2 or 3 position. He's a remarkable human being. He's one of my favourite people, but. In the 4, Jacob Holman, you wouldn't know him. He was an import we had in 18 who was a former league MVP when he was up in the Goldfield Giants a couple of years before that. Super talented, about 6'9", could shoot the 3, put the ball on the floor, and was one of those really positive personalities that you would find.
Yep.
We had him in 18. He does his ACL in the semi-final. Game number 2, I think it was, in the semi-final. Which we ended up going on to win the grand final, of course, without him, which was really tricky, but just to the way that he was, puts him as the number 1 honourable mention. But the guy who wins it for me is another one of these old heads who is just a treat to coach. His name's Rhett Della. Another guy you need to Google if you can. This guy was the most awkward basketball player you would ever see, so efficient. He's another guy who played a lot of years in the competition. And in 2016, we bought him. He was a Coburn kid.
Yep.
He'd gone off and played at Rockingham and Mandurah, played hundreds and hundreds of games. And he had this dream, and he had married into a really prominent Mandurah family, so he was kind of the Mandurah person now. And I remember ringing him up and saying, "Mate, I want you to come to Coburn." And he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to get this one over." And then before you know it, he said yes.
Yep.
And it's kind of like. He said yes because he had this romantic dream to come back to Coburn where he started his career and finished his career, and he thought he could, if he asked for forgiveness later and just says yes, then he would get away with it. So he managed to do that, and he came back and he was off the bench. And another guy like Ben Purser could play all 4 or 5 positions, defend all 5 positions, super smart. We had Gavin Field. You know Gavin Field?
Yes, of course.
So Gavin Field ruptures his elbow.
Yep.
In the semi-finals or the quarter-finals of that year, 2016. and we're having to dig to our bench to find a guy who, you know, is going to step up and fill that role for Bobby, who's a fantastic player. And I mean, he was probably in his peak in 2016 as well. I mean, still in his peak now, but was certainly a really, really good player in this competition. He could do everything. And Rhett, who was sitting on our bench, he was just been plugging holes all season. If we needed someone, he was kind of, you know, like if the boat was sinking, we could put him on and he would fix the leak, and we'll be back on our way. But comes out the grand final, has 20-odd points, wins a grand final MVP, proposes to his missus straight after the game on the court, in front of everyone. Just has that great impact, and you know, still certainly don't see him as much as I'd like to, but still keep in contact with him. And yeah,
still in Perth? Still
in Perth, yeah, loving life. Got 14 kids now or something like that. But yeah, just another awesome guy.
Sweet. Now your centre.
The five. There's some talented fives out there. Tom Jervis would be honourable mention.
Where'd you?
East Perth.
Okay.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. A guy called Marcus Good, who was an import at Coburn. I had super talented. Yeah, you want to watch a highlight film? Watch him, mate. He was 7 foot, about 180 kilos.
Wow.
And could put the ball on the floor, could shoot the three, had this little fadeaway game, like just
180 kilos, like fat.
Big. Yeah, no, he was chunky.
Yeah, okay.
He was not peak playing condition. And he just had a skill set that,
like, nature wide build.
Massive. like remember Escalade? Do you know him? Like,
no.
He was with us and one guy like back in the day.
Oh yes.
Escalade, like him, built like him, and but could absolutely play. But it's definitely Andrew Ferguson. He's got that spot locked up. He's
he just came back from China.
So Japan. So he's in Japan, still playing at the moment. Bit of an injury concern that he's going through at the moment, which has kind of pushed out a little bit longer than he would have liked. But you know, he's worked really hard to become a professional basketball player. He went to Centre of Excellence really early, but he's always been thin, tall, and he works so hard to get better. His improvement comes from the fact that he does the time to get better. And
was he a DP with Wildcats?
He was a DP for the Wildcats, yeah. So I had him at state team. He was pretty raw at the time, but hugely influential on the floor. Like would change shots and change games in his decision making process. And just got to know him. He's just one of my favourite people in the world. And success has been awesome. To get into Perry Lakes was a huge coup, and obviously won a championship with him. So
shout out Fergie. Now 6 man, I'll put a stipulation. You can pick a coach
for a 6 man.
Yeah. If you know a coach who was a great player, can.
Oh, interesting.
So you can put yourself if you want.
Nah, definitely not. I'm going to stick with the guy. I'm pretty loyal. Mitch Clark is going to get it.
Yep.
I know I talked to him about honourable mention in the one, but he is a kid who, when I first got to Hawks, was an underperforming under 18-year-old. Not highly touted by people internally. We ran a little off-season tournament where we would have all this, the 16s and 18s, the D-League team and stuff playing this, and the NBL1 guys playing this tournament at the end of every year, and his maturity and strength and skill just shone out. And I think he was 17 years of age, and I started him in 3 or 4 games that season, and he became really pivotal in that championship.
Was he a skinny kid, or?
He was only a little kid, yeah. He was tiny. He's filled out now and is a professional athlete, but before that he was just a little kid.
I thought he was only like 5'10", but then I stood next to him, he's like 6'1".
He's long. He's deceptively long. Yeah. But he's quick, he's strong, he's fast, he just ticks every box. And the kid probably could have played AFL, to be honest with you. He was fairly well regarded and touted in that space too. So, Bassel was the winner, and he's done some good stuff.
So you've drafted this team. Say you get this team, you put them all in their prime in NBL1. Are you winning a championship?
Yep. And it's because of the balance of people.
Yep.
So it's not going to be a team of 5 people. There's not enough basketball for all of them to get what they need to get. These guys would sacrifice, and that's why they're on the list, because they would generally want to win first, and it doesn't matter who scores it or what they have to do on the floor to win. They will just win.
So we'll say injuries are off, but you still only get the 6 for the entire season.
That'd be awesome.
You still think, even just with 6 players, you could do it?
No, because you got to play these kids, mate. There's enough kids coming through to fill those rest of those roster spots. But and we'll back development in to get some extra players through that. But 6 is hard.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty talented 6.
In your finals, do you cut your rotation short?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So you try to create depth through the season, and you might do it in stages. You might break it down into thirds and create opportunities where more people play earlier on in the season. You tighten up as you go through. But yeah, certainly in the playoffs, I've kind of always promoted a deep team. So 10 to 12, like 12 is always hard to get on the floor, but certainly 10-man rotation. But yeah, as the finals come, you're trying to get that down to 8 if you can.
All right, there you go.
7's probably 7's probably not enough player, and 8's probably too many of a player. So it's kind of right smack bang in the middle. You've got to try and find that rotation.
Nice. All right, there you go. If you weren't named, he doesn't like it. No, I'm kidding.
I love you still.
That's all right. We'll move on. You've said, obviously, during that draft that you've coached some state teams.
Yep.
They would be very different from coaching an NBL 1 team. What are some of the differences you've noticed? Because you obviously have to develop them in the state team.
State teams are a little bit different because most of they've come from two different pathways. We were fortunate enough to have some centre of excellence kids who know how to be full-time basketball players, and the rest of them are still at school or university. Because I only ever coached under 20, so you kind of got that demographic. But I mean, they're all aspirational, wanting to go to college as well. So you've got to try and help them on that journey. But what the difference is it's about preparation. So from when we would do it, we would go, from September right through to the tournament, which was at the beginning of February, and you would have to try and get in as many games as you can. You'd probably almost sacrifice training sessions for games. Because it's in there where you can do that learn opportunity. So it was never really about systems. You tried to keep it as simple as possible and then just put them in positions of success, and that's trying to build maybe a couple of little wrinkles based on their skills. If you've got a big guy, you want to get him in the block. If you've got a guard, you want to get him downhill. So you probably cater small things to them, but not necessarily like full-blown systems, if you know what I mean. Like, you're not going to run a flex series because they're just not going to be able to pick it up in that timeline. But try and play as many games as possible. And again, it's about rotation, because you'll go to these tournaments, and this tournament, which happens for 5 days in a row, and you might play doubles on one, and you don't have days off, right? So they're not as by, and you've got to play all 10 players.
Yeah.
So the roster, your rotations have to match, and that was quite a tricky thing. And I remember, having to do that with a guy by the name of Conrad Francis, who was a successful assistant with me, who I also brought into that state team, and we used to have substitution patterns that we would have to stick by purely just to get the players through so they didn't burn out early enough. Because I remember the first one we went to, which was Dan Gritter and Andrew Ferguson, Corey Chef, we ran them into the ground thinking, they're our best players. We need to play them 30 minutes a game just to be in the game. But, as you start realising that's not sustainable, and you've got to actually get all these, build some roles and opportunities for others, and, less of the burden on them to have to be, winning every single time they're on the floor. It allowed us to get a little bit further into the tournament, and just maintaining that 10-man rotation really helps over the course of the weekend. To come a grand final or gold medal match, you can tighten up as you need, but you certainly need to give them rest as they can.
How did you get that job? Did you put your hat in the ring, or were you sought after? Or
there was no application process. It was just after I won the championship at Coburn, as I moved into Perry Lakes, they were looking for someone to fill the role. We just had a conversation. Brett Coxidge was the high performance manager for WA, and he obviously, left a pretty good legacy in terms of talent after he went back to New South Wales, and he just kind of sought me out. We had a chat, and it just kind of happened.
Yeah,
I certainly hadn't had any aspirations prior to that to be a state team coach at all. It's not something I'd considered.
Yeah,
it just kind of fell.
Was
my
it
way.
more like one of your funner times being
Loved
coach?
it. Yep. And that's why I still want to do these tournament stuff now. And I'm obviously in January, I'm going off to the Aussie prospects and stuff. You just create some great memories with these kids, and you only have a small interaction with them over the course of their career.
Yeah.
But they could learn so much, and I learned so much too. And you learn not to take yourself so seriously as well. You're like, I have to be, perfect. We've got to win today. We've got to practice today for tomorrow. Like, you don't have to have that mentality when you're with a younger group like that. They just want to have fun, and they listen to everything you got to say. So if you say jump, they're going to do so. And I think it's just a nice balance.
Sweet. Well, we've already given some advice on upcoming coaches, and we've spoken to it previously on different episodes. But what are some advice for upcoming players? We go from under 16s ups that want to make that next step.
Yeah, look, that's a great question, Caleb, to be fair with you. You've got to do the work outside. So I think when you're a basketball player, no matter what level of competition, whether it's NBL 1 or WABL, you've got like 4 hours on court. Like, you can't be the most complete player when you're going to training for 4 hours and you're learning systems and structures, and the coach is trying to implement an offense, and you got to learn your defensive rotations. There's no time to do all the little things that makes you a better player. So you've got to do that behind the scenes when no one's looking. Like, you've got to go get your shots up. You've got to find your vitamins, as they call it, where you go out every day and you just find your daily boosts of ball handling or shooting or whatever it is, or mental preparation and mindfulness, which is huge. Like, trying to find that sort of stuff and do the work, I think, is really, really important. but also being humble as well. Like, do your work, trust the work is going to hold you when you need it to, like under pressure, because the more pressure you put yourself under, and every coach, and it's a good advice for a coach, create opportunities of pressure as much as possible. Like if you're expecting teams to full court pressure, practice for it. But not just practice full court pressure, practice with full court double pressure if you need to, just so that your kids get used to it. And it's the same for an individual in the development. Put yourself under pressure during your skill-based program. It's building a good habit that is going to hold up when the pressure exists. And that's the key. And then the rest is just be a really good person. I think it's important that if you're going to come in with an ego or a fair bit of arrogance, you're not going to last long. Like, because no coach wants to bring in somebody who is just a knob, to be honest with you. Like, I want to bring people in that fill my cup, or, who are a bit of like a helium balloon who just, you're floating around.
Don't take away from people.
Yeah, exactly. Or add to, exactly. They add to people. So I think, having a little bit of gratitude is not a bad thing every now and then. And, the work will pay off. The people will help you get there. Be happy to be in that environment.
Oh, sweet. Well, there you go, players. That's some advice. And follow other episodes as well for more advice as well that previously been said, even though they're pretty much nearly the exact same.
Yeah, mate. And there's a common occurrence, right? There's something in that. I think as successful coaches, you just want people who want to get better, and you can work with them.
Yeah.
Those people who think they already know, obviously don't.
Well, we could go for hours, man. We'll probably get you back on for another episode later on, because this conversation is just flowing, but we've run out of time. But thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again to our sponsors for bringing this show to you guys. Follow, like, sub, do what you need to do. Where can the people find you if they want to get in contact with you?
I'll be around. I'll be around. Yeah, hard to miss.
No worries. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Ciao.